Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, hoping you're doing well, and I'm doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw a new anime film, Chainsaw Man, the movie Res Arc, which a bunch of people in the comment section have informed me is a anime that they personally really enjoyed. Open to saying that it's not one of the bigger animes out there, but still a good one nonetheless. But really, none of that matters as far as just how big or not Chainsaw Man is in the grand scheme of the history of anime. What is still very prominent and what is still the big story of the weekend is the fact that this anime, which seemingly came out of nowhere, not a lot of anticipation going on for it as far as the box office projectors out there. You had a couple of places that didn't even mention Chainsaw Man, even in their analysis, as far as, you know, what the top 1, 2, 3 movies of the weekend were going to be. So I think that just kind of goes ahead and shows you how much of a surprise that this was for a lot of people out there. Now, of course, because I do look at places like Box Office Theory and Box Office Report, and they tend to include some of these other films and tend to also, you know, be pretty good when it comes to the tracking. It wasn't really surprising to see it in this position, but to see it very comfortably in the number 1 position. And in addition to that, having Black Phone 2 in the second position here for the domestic weekend is really what the surprise was for me, because that means all of the other newer releases from Hollywood, whether that be the new romantic film Regretting You from Paramount, the Springsteen biopic from 20th Century Studios, or the Chris Stuckman film from Neon. And yes, that is, of course, Neon, a more independent production company. Mike Flanagan as a producer, but it is also still Chris Stuckman, who we all know changed his entire channel and changed the entire way he talked about movies to try to basically placate to and to try to buddy up with Hollywood producers and Hollywood actors and Hollywood, the Hollywood machine, as it were, to try to make it as palatable as he could to get into the industry. And again, obviously, kudos to him for actually being able to carry it out, but was it worth the price of everything else? I think that is going to be up for debate for quite a long time. But with all of that being said, Chainsaw Man walked away with this very easily, winning the number 1 spot this weekend by several $1 million here. And seeing that this is an anime film that costs probably nothing to make, it's already made a decent amount of money in Japan and other locations. Yeah, this is a huge win for anime, also a huge win for Sony as the distributor on this specific movie. And just goes to ahead to show you how bad Hollywood is today with, again, these newer releases, not doing nearly as well as had been anticipated, but also in many cases just doing very, very badly. Not as bad, of course, as Tron Ares, which dropped over 1,000 screens. So after 3 weeks, they've finally decided to abandon that film. Even so, it only dropped 56%, even with that massive amount of screens lost. That film still not making much of anything, still a catastrophic failure and flop. And then the new film from Chris Stuckman, Shelby Oaks. I say new because it's been in production for quite a long time. There was an initial release. It got picked up by Neon, got a lot more money put behind it to finish some of the effects that had not been finished in the previous iteration of the movie. And sure enough, some horror fans were indeed willing to go out of their way in a more limited release, over 1,800 screens, made around $2.3 million as far as profitability is concerned, based off of the reported marketing, which there's a bit of a range there as far as what the actual budgeting was for the film. There was the initial cost up front, and then there was an injection of cash flow after the fact, with reshoots and other things mentioned with it. So we're talking about a film that probably cost by the end of its run between $2 or $3 million. So very, very low budget, still nonetheless opening out to $2.3 million for a first attempt from Neon. Hey, I think Chris Stuckman is off to a decent start here, and I think profitability for this specific movie is definitely up there, and let's just hope that he is able to do other projects where maybe other people are writing. That's the biggest complaint that I've heard about the film, is that the writing is just not all there. The visuals are really cool. There's a lot of homages to, it's also to the detriment of the film, apparently. There's a lot of homages to other films, some of, notably Chris Stuckman's favorite horror films ever, so it's kind of like a love letter in many ways to some of those, but at the same time, as you are a filmmaker, if your products, especially your first one, is a almost complete derivative of better properties and more well-done properties as a more cohesive unit with better scripts and better stories, that definitely is going to be something that holds you back, which is why a lot of the reviews I'm hearing saying, hey, great first effort, awesome that a YouTuber was able to get to this point. but nothing that is going to be worth writing home about, and nothing that is worth going to see specifically in theaters as of right now, going out of your way to try to find it and hunt for it or anything to that extent. But again, kudos to him for making it and to fulfilling his dream. But yeah, let's just hope that better decisions are made in the future, especially when it comes to Hollywood, right? Because when you are talking about Chainsaw Man, this is not a as well-known IP, at least from my perspective. I know that there's always anime fans out there that always like to put in the comment section, oh, this is one of my favorites, or this is one of the better ones out there. This is one that's a lot easier to kind of jump in without having to do all this homework or look up all the history of it. That all being said, we, of course, can just go based off of the numbers that we have in front of us here. And so overall, though, this is a huge win for them. $17.2 million in the number one spot domestically here. Black Phone 2 actually got the number 2 spot here, dropping only 52%. That's a pretty decent hold for a film that's gotten pretty mixed reviews. I would say probably mixed positive side. I think it's still like a rad score over on Criticlist. So obviously, there are a lot of people enjoying it. I myself gave it a rad score, though definitely not as good as the first iteration of the franchise, the first film in this now franchise, right? I do think that ultimately, though, there are a lot of people that are enjoying it, and that seems to be to its benefit. It is probably on the cusp of breaking even within the course of the next week, with the Halloween season officially upon us. And for many people, spooky season's been around for a long time. At least their spirit and their celebration of it has been around for a long time. But All Hallows Eve is officially this Friday, with All Saints Day following that. So that All Hallows tide, as it were, that very solemn time in the history of the church, where we commemorate the lives of those that we have lost, whether they be the saints or the suffering in purgatory. It's just a very rich liturgical time of year, but Halloween is, of course, a big part of that, has become a big secular part of that as well. And so do expect for films like Black Phone to maybe be able to have some pretty good holds in its third weekend of release, with this coming Friday, especially being Halloween. Not really much to said. The same really can't be said for the next couple of films, right? So Regretting You, this film has that potential, right, as a romantic film that, is a genre that does not do all that well these days, right? They're kind of always hits and misses. Not off to a great start, $12.8 million there, so just barely losing to Black Phone 2. Maybe when the actuals come in for the weekend, those numbers will flip, right? That number 2 and 3 spot will flip. But as a starting point there, for a budget that was around $30 million, definitely not as good as maybe they would have hoped it to be. You then had Springsteen, the biopic from 20th Century Studios, from Disney, spending over $55 million on the production budget of this movie, $9.1 million in total domestic. Not a good start. So as Regretting You has some potential to maybe do something down the line. 20th Century Studios, Springsteen, does not really have the same position. It has a lot more money to make back theatrically, if it is ever going to get close to making that back, which right now it's not looking all that great. And its future is basically going to be to go straight to Disney Plus, in which case they get no money off of that. They might try to, on paper, claim that they sold the rights to Disney Plus, but that is just putting money in one pocket, putting into another. And I just call that fraud at the end of the day. Speaking of fraud, another Disney product here, Tron Ares, dropping 56%, only $4.9 million in week 3. The film has only grossed $63 million domestically. That is abysmal. Good Fortune from Lionsgate, dropping 50% in its second weekend. Not a terrible drop-off for this comedy, but also very low starting point. Then Shelby Oaks, the number 7 spot from Neon. That's a Chris Stuckman film. One battle after another, dropping 39%. This one also by Warner Brothers, being dropped by over 1,000 screens, so clearly they don't think down the line this film is going to make any money. They are, I think, only putting it out there and keeping it out there for awards consideration, because that's basically all that they can do with that movie going forward. And then the last of the ranked films, at least according to the numbers.com, is Roofman, dropping 46% in its third weekend of release, but also dropping over 1,000 screens. That film essentially donezo as far as total box office being concerned. Now, going over to Chainsaw Man, right, we had mentioned before that this movie, of course, as an anime, had some... Now, again, I say anime, I'm also someone that is not an expert when it comes to these properties, and so now looking at the international box office, I probably have misspoken. Whatever the equivalent of anime is in South Korea, I don't know if it's also called anime or if there's something else to it, but this looks like a South Korean animation, so I take that just by the fact that it's the highest number here. here on the global scale. This is a film that would have been released, it seems, a little bit earlier in some of these places, has been released in Japan, but there are no official numbers being reported on the numbers.com at the very least. So again, the biggest chunk of all of this as far as where it was released was South Korea, which has total, as of right now, made up to $19.1 million. So again, apologies out there for anyone who's like, he keeps calling it an anime, it's technically not an anime. Again, I'm not an expert in that genre, in that field. What I can say is $108 million, clearly most of it coming from the international, most of it from South Korea, Taiwan, and I imagine once those numbers get reported in, Japan as well. Kudos to them for, again, making a decent opening weekend here in the domestic side of things. Black Phone 2, $80 million there is where it currently stands, and right now we're projecting that this film has a chance to be able to make some money off of that film, right, to actually make a little bit of profit. Again, whether it'll be as popular as the first film, as of right now, even when you adjust for inflation, it's kind of neck and neck with the first film, at least domestically. The quite big question, of course, is going to be internationally. Where does it end up? Does it end up in a very similar position or not? So this is definitely not the best case scenario. I think they were probably expecting a little bit more for this movie, but definitely not the downer that it could have been after the initial release, where the initial release was fine, but not what they had probably been wanting or expecting. Regretting You. Again, that poster is very much okay, it's just trying to really push the whole romantic stuff, young teen romance stuff, so trying to appeal that younger demographic. The numbers don't really seem to show them showing up in any clear way, so whether or not it'll be able to actually do much of anything at the box office is still a little too early to tell. We'll find out next weekend if there are any holdovers and just how well they hold. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, a biopic that I had not even heard of or known it was coming down the pipe. No one is going to see, so can't say that prospects are good for that film. Tron Ares, of course, still a catastrophic failure for Disney. Good Fortune, not all that much better there. Shelby Oaks, $2.3 million. Again, Chris Stuckman's film finally comes out, and so far, mixed reviews overall, so I'm sure that you will fall on one of the many sides of that particular film. One battle after another, $179 million there. Again, people are going to try to say, hey, it's doing fine for the kind of movie that it is, and hey, it's all about awards consideration. That might be the case, but a lot of money was sunk into this movie, and it is not making that money back. And then Roofman, $22 million, not a whole lot of money there as well. Going over the charts, because we love Chauncey on OMB Reviews to kind of wrap things up for today. We've, of course, got Shelby Oaks right now is, according to the box office available to us, and again, the budget is not really completely certain, so let me go ahead and put my line through on this one, just that way everyone is aware that we don't know for sure exactly where this is going to, what the total cost was with marketing and everything else. Again, did they spend a lot on marketing or not? Obviously, Neon got involved. There was trailers. There was clearly promotional materials for this, and so they probably had a pretty, standard marketing spend, which you take the budget, multiply it by 1.5, that gets you your total cost with marketing. So a budget of $2 million, marketing of around $1 million, and about a $3 million total spend. But again, there's different ranges of numbers being reported out there, so take that with a grain of salt. But with a starting point of $2.3 million domestically, that puts it still only about $1 million or so in the red. So I imagine by the end of its run, especially with Halloween coming up this weekend, we'll probably see Shelby Oaks maybe get a bit of an expansion from Neon potentially. Who knows? And we'll of course see and continue to follow that and make some final projections on the film as of next weekend. Springsteen, starting off at $16.2 million worldwide in its opening weekend, is $74 million in the red. Again, a $55 million budget here, so not off to a great start for that film. Regretting You had a much smaller budget of around $30 million, but had a global start of only $22.8 million, so that's currently $33 million in the red, so again, maybe it ends with a very small box office loss, but not off to a great start. We'll see if this film legs out. If it legs out, then that changes the game quite a bit. But as of right now, a pretty low box office opening. Black Phone 2, $80.4 million. We do have a week 2 number here now on this film. As you can see, minus $5 million in the red currently, based off of the numbers. But after the first 2 weeks with $80.4 million, that's the 2-week total there. We can project, based off of the historical standards of where most films tend to go after their first 2 weeks, the film will make somewhere between $114 and $160 million by the end of its run. So that's the global total numbers there. With a budget of $30 million, that's a overall profit of between $23 and $51 million, taking into account the modern day takes of international, especially if there's any money coming from China. We're probably going to look at gains closer to somewhere between somewhere between 20 million and 45 million would be more likely for us to see where that film actually ends up. Now, just quickly going over, because we like to do things live here, of course, on the channel, let's go ahead and pull up the first film of The Black Phone. So before you adjust for inflation, that film ended up making a total of $161 million worldwide by the end of its run. So based off of that and the current tracking of the film, this means that as of right now, on a best case scenario, it actually will be able to match the total box office, unadjusted box office of the first Black Phone movie. But as I've been mentioning previously, I don't think it's going to have that kind of a run. Very surprising to see the hold it had this weekend. Maybe it'll hold well next weekend because of Halloween. But after that, I don't know how much staying power there is, because I don't think that the film is that much better than the first in many ways. So again, jury's still out on this one too. But as of right now, we can at the very least say it will make money, it will make profit. That's always a good thing for them. For a smaller budgeted film to make about your budget's back in net profit is a good thing. But I think that they were probably hoping for a bit more, seeing that the last film, the first film, made $160 million globally off of a budget that was about $10 million less. So again, not what they were probably hoping for, but also not necessarily a loss for them in that regard. But those are the numbers as they stand. Of course, we do have the other films that some people might be wanting to track. Tron Ares, still $211 million in the red. That's not looking to change anytime soon. Roofman, still not there. Smashing Machine, still not there either. And all the other films basically have been pretty static. And so let me know your thoughts about this and anything else that I mentioned in the comment section down below. Did you see the Springsteen film? Did you see Shelby Oaks? Did you see Regretting You? Or any of the films from last weekend? Anything you're looking forward to this coming weekend? Let me know in your comments section as well. You guys seriously are great. Make sure you smash the like button, smash the rumble button as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed Sunday, a feast of Christ the King on the traditional calendar, the appropriate feast of the kingship of Christ. For Christ is indeed King of all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now let me give a shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my Patreon members, Father Luca Illich, hail to you, Father, and also to Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. She is very lovely, great, awesome Catholic faith-based content over there. You'll also find over on Subscribestar my member Matt317. He is on Twitch with the same channel name, Matt317. Shout out to you, good sir. And also to a longtime member here, Mr. Roy, my Chosen of Valhalla member here on YouTube. Mr. Roy, thank you for always hanging out and for always being a part of this channel. It does mean a lot, as well as it does for all of my Chosen of Valhalla members. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream or video, or if you want it listed in that list that was playing just before, just now, check out the top link in the video description below. You'll find out how to get those types of shout outs at the end of every live stream and video. Not to mention, you get access to bonus video content and also access to a Discord server where there are a couple of channels on there where I do giveaways every single month. In fact, I do multiple giveaways every single month. I try to make it so that I'm giving away Blu-rays and 4Ks that make up at least 4 or 5 different giveaways. Sometimes I have to put them in all towards the very end because back in the school session, of course, now means that I'm going to be a little bit more delayed there. So if you want access to things like that, if you want access to a great community, you guys seriously are all amazing and beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.